Good morning, class.
Good morning, teacher.
Today, we're going to focus on the phrasal verb act on and its usage in English. Act on is a powerful phrase that conveys the idea of taking action or responding to something. Let's delve into it. Firstly, act on can mean to take action based on a piece of information or advice. It implies that you are putting into practice what you have learned or heard. For example, I acted on my doctor's advice and started exercising regularly. Let's see an example of a daily life conversation that demonstrates the use of act on in the context of taking action based on advice.
I've been having trouble sleeping lately. Do you have any suggestions?
Well, one thing that might help is to avoid consuming caffeine before bed.
That's a good idea. I'll act on your advice and cut down on coffee in the evenings.
In this conversation, Marie receives advice from John about improving their sleep. Marie decides to act on the advice by reducing their caffeine intake. It shows how the phrase act on is used to indicate taking action based on advice received. Can anyone provide another example of act on in a similar context?
My friend suggested that I act on my passion for photography and start a photography blog.
Excellent example. You've got it. Now, let's move on to the second use of act on. Act on can also mean to take action in response to a particular situation or stimulus. It implies that you are reacting or responding to something that has happened. For example, the company decided to act on the negative feedback from customers and make improvements to their product. Let's see an example of a daily life conversation that demonstrates the use of act on in the context of responding to a situation.
There have been many accidents at this intersection lately. Something needs to be done.
I agree. The local authorities should act on the situation and install traffic lights or speed bumps.
Definitely. It's important to take action before more accidents occur.
In this conversation, Bob and Anna discuss the need for action to address the frequent accidents at an intersection. They suggest that the local authorities should act on the situation by implementing safety measures. It shows how the phrase act on is used to indicate responding to a situation. Can anyone share another example of act on in a similar context?
The school administration decided to act on the students' request and introduce a recycling program.
Well done. You're catching on quickly. Now, let's explore the third use. Act on can also mean to follow through with a decision or plan of action. It suggests that you are executing or carrying out something that has been previously decided. For example, the team acted on their strategy and successfully launched the new product. Let's see an example of a daily life conversation that demonstrates the use of act on in the context of following through with a plan.
We've been discussing organizing a charity event for a while now. It's time to act on it.
Absolutely. Let's set a date, form a planning committee, and start reaching out to potential sponsors.
I agree. It's important to act on our plan and make a positive impact in the community.
In this conversation, Amber and Mr. Jobs have been discussing a plan to organize a charity event. They decide that it's time to act on their plan by setting a date, forming a committee, and initiating sponsor outreach. It demonstrates how the phrase act on is used to indicate following through with a decision or plan. Can anyone provide another example of act on in a similar context?
After extensive research, the scientists acted on their findings and published the groundbreaking study.
Great job. You're doing great. Now, let's move on to the fourth use of act on. Act on can also mean to be influenced or motivated by a particular emotion or impulse. It suggests that your actions are guided by a specific feeling or instinct. For example, he acted on his anger and said things he later regretted. Let's see an example of a daily life conversation that demonstrates the use of act on in the context of being influenced by emotions.
Why did you confront your colleagues so aggressively during the meeting?
I apologize. I was frustrated and acted on my anger without thinking it through.
It's important to control our emotions and not let them dictate our actions.
In this conversation, Arya questions Brandon's aggressive behavior during a meeting. Brandon acknowledges that they acted on their anger without considering the consequences. It illustrates how the phrase act on is used to indicate being influenced by emotions. Can anyone share another example of act on in a similar context?
She acted on her intuition and made the decision to invest in the startup.
Excellent choice. You're doing a fantastic job. Now, let's discuss the final use of act on. Act on can also mean to carry out or perform a task or duty. It implies that you are fulfilling a responsibility or obligation. For example, the manager acted on the company's policies and addressed the employee's complaint. Let's see an example of a short daily life conversation that demonstrates the use of act on in the context of fulfilling a duty.
We received a customer complaint about a faulty product. What should we do?
As part of our customer service protocol, we should act on the complaint immediately and offer a replacement or refund.
Agreed. Resolving customer issues promptly is essential for maintaining our reputation.
In this conversation, Ashley and David discuss a customer complaint and the necessary course of action. David suggests that they act on the complaint by providing a resolution according to their customer service protocol. It highlights how the phrase act on is used to indicate fulfilling a duty or responsibility. Can you think of another example of act on in a similar context?
The police officer acted on their duty and apprehended the suspect.
Well done. You've grasped the concept perfectly. That concludes our lesson on the phrasal verb act on in English. I hope you now have a better understanding of how to use this phrase in different contexts. Remember to practice using act on in your conversations and written work. Keep up the great work, and see you in our next class.